I just thought like, oh, great. Yeah, I'll just sketch out this website. We'll build it. I didn't think it was going to be that hard. Within like a couple weeks, I was making 6 figures. There are creators literally doing over $1 million a month on the platform now. That's beautiful.
Just in its latest financing round, Patreon has a $4 billion valuation.
That is a new era for humans.
Jack Conte is the epitome of the creator entrepreneur. He started out as a musician and then built a $4 billion company in Patreon. And along the way, he's been uploading to YouTube the whole time.
I love Jack's videos.
There are a lot of creators who are making significant money every month from Patreon. For example, Cody Ko and Noel Miller with Tiny Meat Gang have 24,000 patrons who pay them on a monthly basis. Patreon is actually the reason that Cody and Noel were able to become full-time creators. All right, before we start this episode, we're going to make some coffee and we hope that you do the same.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
This is Cometeer Coffee. It's an entirely new way to make coffee.
So Cometeer partners with some of the best regional coffee shops, and they will grind and brew it to perfection, and they will flash freeze it to lock in the freshness and just provide the best possible cup of coffee.
It comes in these frozen capsules, and you put it in a cup and just put hot water on it, or if you like it iced, you can just put it over ice and water, and you get an amazing cup of coffee in like literally seconds. So I've always been pretty skeptical about a make-it-yourself coffee experience. I'm a coffee shop, let an expert do it type of guy. And a lot of that is because making coffee at home oftentimes is like a big cleanup experience.
It's a huge cleanup.
The grinds are all over.
And sometimes it doesn't pay off because it's not even that good.
We are coffee snobs.
You're more of a snob than I am.
Oh, I'm the snob.
Is that wrong?
You're the snob. I'm really picky about my coffee, but Cometeer just straight up, like no milk, no sugar, just straight up is delicious.
Can you tell that we love Cometeer? Because we really love Cometeer. I don't know what else to say.
So if you want to try this coffee and taste it for yourself, we have a link in our description for $20 off. So you can click that link, get $20 off your first order at Cometeer. But I also want to offer that I will buy someone the gift of Cometeer. I'll pick someone random in the comments. It's the holidays, Colin.
That's a nice thing of you to do.
Yeah.
I will not.
So Jack, first question, how dare you?
How dare
just
I?
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Who do you think you are? What did I walk into?
Man, it is so great to have you here. I remember the first time seeing one of your videos and I watched it 5 times and it was the idea for Casey Neistat because I'd never seen a video edited like that in my life. And I was like, who is this guy?
Like the scoring on this is unbelievable. Where did this guy come from?
What's up, Casey? My name is Jack Conte. I am the CEO of Patreon.
But it was so complex to find out that you were not only a creator, but also the CEO of a company. But I'm just so excited to have you here. And there's been really big news about Patreon this year. I remember reading the news about how you guys raised $155 million and valued at $4 billion. How does this all feel for you right now?
Crazy and wild and awesome and all the things. But I think mostly it's just, it feels awesome to see other people believing in this thing that so many of us have been believing in for so long. You guys have been believing in so long and seeing and calling attention to. And I feel like I've been, hey, there's a real thing over here. Everybody look at this. And to see public markets investors and the industry kind of wake up to what's happening has been really fun over the last year, especially. That's been like a really wonderful thing. I think it's going to be awesome for creators.
How many creators are making money on Patreon right now?
There are over 250,000 creators that are earning like money every month.
Wow. And do you know how many of those creators are making, you know, a salary or are fully supported?
Yeah. So about 50% of our payments volume, so 15% of processed payments goes to creators who are making between $1,000 and $10,000 a month. So that's $12,000 to $120,000 a year, which to us is a really exciting stat because that's like, if you didn't believe that the creative middle class is possible, and everybody's sort of using different words to describe what that is, but basically you don't have to be Taylor Swift to make a living as a creator anymore. You know, if there's a stat that shows that that is real and now it's that. You know, there's this whole group of people that are building media companies, leasing office space, hiring teams, making stuff that they love as their own boss and getting paid for it. So yeah, it's a lot of people now.
So why don't we go back now to kind of the early days, Jack Conte before CEO of Patreon. How do you come up with this idea? Like, as a creator, why do you jump from being an artist to deciding that you want to take on this challenge?
It wasn't really a decision. It was not strategic, and it was not planned. It was just one of those things. I could ask you guys the same question, like, so when did you decide to be CEOs of your own media company? It's like, well, that's not quite what the decision was.
Right.
The same was true for me. I mean, Pomplamoose was putting out videos and reaching millions of people on a regular basis and making a few $100s in ad revenue. And like, I remember in 2010, we did a book drive for the Richmond School District. We posted one YouTube video. We said to folks, hey, if you donate a book to this school district, we'll send you our album for free. Like, it was a really simple deal. Just donate a book, we'll send you our record. The only way to get the record is to donate a book to the Richmond Book Drive. And the school district ended up having to rent a shipping container to keep up with the like a train car. It was like 11,000 books that got sent to the school. It's like $140,000 worth of books. And something about it felt really good. I felt excited. I felt proud that I was doing something that was impactful and helping people. But also I felt like, what's wrong with this? Like, why? There's so much energy and passion and enthusiasm, and I'm making $150 a month in ad revenue. Like, what is wrong?
And you were doing in the millions of views.
Millions of views.
Got it.
That was kind of what was happening at that time. And then at one point, my wife went off, signed a record deal for her solo project, went off to tour the world, left me home alone by myself. I won't go into the details, but I started working on this giant music video. I kind of went down the rabbit hole, as sometimes we do. And I ended up spending 3 months on this video, drained my savings account, spent 10 grand, maxed out 2 credit cards, just went nuts. I ended up building a replica of a Millennium Falcon cockpit, like in my studio. Involved these 2 robots. One was like a 3D printed hexapod robot. The other was this animatronic head that was singing the lyrics of the song. I mean, I went nuts on this video. I poured myself into it. I was working 19-hour days, like just gunning it. And at the end of this process, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to post this video. It's going to get 1 million views. My fans are going to go nuts because I've never made anything this insane before, you know? And I'm going to get paid like $200 for 3 months of my life. And after draining my savings account. And it was that moment at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, that I felt like I don't want to just complain about this. Like, I want to do something about this. And so I sat down at my kitchen table and I sketched out this idea for a membership platform on 14 pieces of printer paper. Called up my freshman year roommate in college. He got super excited about it, started building it. And then I launched as the first creator on Patreon.
Were there any options that came to mind outside of starting your own tech platform? Like, let me try and sell some merchandise. Like, were you doing other things before you came to that decision?
I had been doing a lot of that. I had been selling merch. But I was like, what year is it? Like, why am I putting my logo on a hat and selling it to my like, that's not what makes me valuable as a person. What makes me valuable is my creative output, my work. Like, why do I have to kind of play all these games to get paid for what makes me valuable in the world and to my fans? I wanted to just be paid for making videos, if that makes sense.
So how do you get to launch of jackconte.com, or did it quickly shift from jackconte.com to Patreon?
So by the time I had sketched it out on that printer paper, I was already thinking about it as, no, this is more than just my website. This is something a lot of creators would want. And how did we get to launch? Well, again, the person turned out to be my co-founder. We happened to be roommates and in college together. We were just randomly paired up as freshman year roommates. And I called him up and I said, Sammy, you gotta check this out. Look at what's happening. He got it instantly. He was like, Jack, this is gonna work. This is awesome. And so we started building it that night, actually. When the day that I showed him the sketches, he started building it. Took him about 2.5 months. He built all of Patreon by himself in 2.5 months, the first version. And then, yeah, we launched with 3 creators. It was me, my girlfriend, and our roommate, Lauren. And the 3 of us launched on the first day. And yeah, within like a couple weeks, I was making 6 figures as a creator.
A couple weeks?
Yeah, then a couple weeks.
Wow. So it worked immediately.
Immediately. And I didn't know that was going to happen. Like I was confident there'd be like energy there. And the first day, I think like within a few hours, I got to $700 a month. And I thought like, I can't believe it's like 3 times as much as I make in ad revenue in an hour. It was clear that I was going to make 6 figures. If I kept creating, I would make 6 figures as a creator.
What made you think that your community would pay you like that on a monthly basis? Because I feel like that's a big jump. Even today, a lot of creators have a little bit of imposter syndrome, or they're underconfident when it comes to charging their community like that.
At that point, I'd been uploading videos for 7 years. I started uploading to YouTube in 2007, was my first YouTube video. And we were featured on the homepage in 2008. And, you know, I just felt the power of that community. I felt the excitement and energy and enthusiasm of fans. That book drive that we had done a couple years before that, I just felt like people want to be a part of something awesome. They want to help. They want to join. They want to work with you as a creator.
Did you have a sense too from like playing shows? Like playing shows and seeing who showed up? Like, was that a direct comparison or not really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like when Pomplamoose would go on tour,
right,
1,000 people would show up to our shows.
Yeah.
Like Pomplamoose shows are insane. I crowd surf in Pomplamoose shows. Like I jump into the crowd and get carried
amazing.
to the back of the room. And like, it is crazy and fun and we're rocking out. It's the most fun thing ever. I love those shows. That's that feeling. It's like, wait a minute, there's real energy here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a moment in time where you realized that Patreon was going to work for you as an artist. When did you realize Patreon was going to work as a platform?
That's such a good question. 'Cause at the beginning, I like had faith that it would work as a platform, and it started working for many, many people. Creators launched and started making thousands of dollars a month. Within the first year, so many creators surpassed me as a creator. You know, at the time when I launched in 2013, I had 100,000 subs. And then creators started launching who had 500,000 subs, 1 million subs. And they started just, you know, crushing my earnings. And then at that point, I had a lot of confidence that like, that's going to be a really important model for a lot of people.
How much of you at this time was thinking, okay, this is amazing. My artistic career is now secure and I'm going to go stronger. I'm going to go heavier in that direction. Or, okay, this platform I just made is taking off. It was successful. Let me go hard in that direction.
Yeah. This is the hard thing that I don't talk about a lot, but it's been like a very painful like thing for me, if I'm being honest, because I am my pilot light, it comes from creation and making things and making cool videos and doing projection mapping and telling stories. And, that's where I get my energy from. And, it became very clear, like within a year or two, that we were building a company, which is a triple time job. And there was this moment where I remember I met with our head of operations and my wife, because I wasn't taking a salary from the company as CEO. I said to the team, like, I want to make my living as a creator. I don't want to take a salary as a CEO, partially because I wanted to prove that the product would work. And also partially because it was like an identity thing for me. Like I wanted to make my living as an artist. I took a lot of pride in the fact that I made a living as an artist, and I didn't want to make a living as a tech person. I wanted to make a living as an artist. Yeah. And I remember sitting down with our head of operations and my wife in our apartment. And, it just became very clear that like the company's pace of growing and scaling and executive hiring and teammate hiring and all the things that we were doing needed full-time attention, and not just full-time attention, like triple time. It's like it is a grueling job. That was a very difficult thing for me to kind of go through, because it was an identity thing for me. Now, years after that, I kind of found a way by building teams. I got a bunch of team building skills working at Patreon, and been able to apply those skills to Pomplamoose and Scary Pockets, which is my other band. And now both of those bands are putting out a new video every week. And so I'm a prolific creator again. But there was a period of a few years there where I was heads down in operations. I still am actually heads down in operations, but without creating for a couple years. And that was a very challenging, tough moment.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most challenging parts of this inflection point we're at right now of creators turning into small businesses. Because running a media company is really different from being an artist. It's completely different. You actually start to productize your art, right? You look at it completely differently. You look at it from a process perspective, from a margin perspective, from systems design perspective, and it's a completely different relationship with your work than it is, And I'm wondering why did you choose to be the CEO, and why weren't you just founder and, number one creator on Patreon? Why did you say I'm going to be the CEO of this company?
As a creator myself, I have watched some of these companies go down a spiral of not taking care of the people who made the platforms. And I had never been on the inside of one of those companies. I had only seen it happen from the outside. But I knew that as a creator, I wasn't feeling prioritized on Facebook. And as a creator, I wasn't feeling prioritized sometimes on YouTube even. And I have felt from the beginning that I had just always wished that there had been a creator running one of these companies. And I think I happened to stumble into that, and I feel very lucky to be in that position. But I guess the answer to the question is, I think it's important that there's a creator at the helm of this thing, for better or for worse, for whatever trade-offs that means. I think it's important that there's a person whose heart is in creators doing this. So I'm doing it.
Would you say that's the most important thing that you think you bring to Patreon?
I think it's the thing that I bring to Patreon. There's a lot of things I don't bring to Patreon. I don't, it's no secret. I don't have, Patreon's my first job. I didn't used to work at Facebook. Right. I'm not an engineer. I'm not Jeff Bezos. I'm not, Mark Zuckerberg. I don't have those backgrounds or experiences or skills. And so the thing that I think I bring is that creator focus and centrism and care.
I really love that answer. I think that's an intangible that might not be looked at as in a lot of different industries. But I think as our space, as the creator space continues to grow, it's going to be one of the most important things, because I think when you treat creators like tech startups, you can't actually, it just doesn't work, right? And a lot of people I think are looking at creators like that. But a creator is a very complex individual, and you're building for multiple creators. That is, I don't envy anyone who's building at scale for creators like that, because I know my group of 20 creators that I hang out with, we all have completely different needs.
It's one of the most decentralized group of people with everyone has a different roadmap. There may be little bits and pieces that are shared, but they're all different.
And it's actually what we think about with our show, what our content is. We think the exact same thing, that we felt like a lot of creators were being covered from the outside in, and we wanted to cover the space from the inside out. We wanted to be the voice of, hey, we've been doing it for 10 years. We think we can help you tell your story and tell this story to people who are interested in the creator space, and tell the stories of creators to those interested, because it should come from the inside. You can't understand it if you're not someone who presses upload or publishes content on a weekly basis.
There's so much that you can't, you can do as much research as you want and talk to as many creators as you want, But unless you've hit upload and you've felt the fear of saying the wrong thing or making the wrong episode that pisses your fans off, or
That you hate too.
and felt like you felt like you knew you shouldn't have, but you decided to take a risk, or you're moving faster. Unless you felt those things, you can't. Totally. And actually, even the hard thing is like, even having felt those things, it's still hard. Yeah. Like building for creators is so hard because it's a word that everybody's using these days. Everybody's using the word creator. But when we say creator, we mean something different than when LinkedIn says creators. Totally. Yeah. And they mean something different than when Facebook says creators. Yeah. And there's no canonical definition of creator that the industry has agreed on. There's no singular set of attributes that makes a creator. So it's this kind of nebulous new thing that we're all kind of working on. And I think it's really hard. Even if you I am one type of creator, you guys are one type of creator, but there are one of the things we found is there are so many types of creators. Yeah.
So we've always been in the business of building niche communities, right? Like that is who we are. We love making videos for the community we're a part of. We did it first when we both grew up playing lacrosse and felt like something was missing. And then again, more recently with Colin and Samir, we felt like 10 years ago when we started on YouTube, there wasn't like a space to hear stories about how this all worked. And that's what we wanted. So this is what we made, right? It's like, we were very much creatures of habit in the sense of, hey, we're part of a community. It's missing something. We want to make it. And that fits really nicely with Patreon, with the business model of Patreon. I wanted to talk a bit about our hesitancy around launching a Patreon.
Great.
And hear your kind of response, because I would imagine there's other creators who feel like us as well.
Yeah.
We've toyed around with it for years. And what we get concerned about with membership and like indefinite membership, I guess I'll say, is what happens over long periods of time. Is it just a recipe for either the creator to eventually stop or burn out and for an audience member to get bored? Like, how does it work over long periods of time? And that's been our main concern, is that if we start one today, it's scary to think that it's indefinite. It's much more like digestible if we think about, we're going to do a pay-per-view course, right? We did a course last year, has a start and an end. It has a set price. You pay that price, you get that value, the end, right? And now we could do it again, maybe. But membership matters because the only way we were able to do this and build a company and build a process and have a career doing this is through monthly recurring revenue. And that's what membership does. So what, I guess, do you say to creators like us who are concerned about that notion of indefinite, I don't know.
Yeah, my concern has always been, we're not Netflix. We're not licensing content, right?
So it's all on us. Yeah.
It's all on us.
Yeah, you guys aren't a machine. You're creators.
Yeah.
Yeah. So two things. One, when Patreon launched, we didn't launch with the monthly product. That's not how Patreon launched, because that was my concern too. I was like, what if I want to take 3 months off? Or what if I want to take a year off?
Right.
So actually, paid per month was not how it worked. It was paid per video, or paid per podcast, or paid per whatever. You could fill in the blank.
Oh.
And then one time, someone signed up and wrote per month, and they just kind of hacked the platform. And we thought, that should be a feature. So we made it. We made a per month checkbox, and then you could be paid per month instead of per work. And now 93% of creators, somewhere around there, do per month instead of per thing.
I didn't even know per thing was an option.
Yeah, I know that was an
option.
That's interesting.
It's not exactly the most elegant solution to the problem of like, hey, I'm not a machine, I'm a human. I want to be able to take breaks. Like I think there are more elegant solutions to that that we can solve in a variety of ways. But the first thing I would say is like, yes, that fear resonates so much with me personally. I launched per video, not per month, for that same reason. So that's the first thing. Second thing I would say is a lot of creators have this fear of my membership is a promise. I've made a promise to my members. Here are the tiers. There's $3, there's $5, there's $25. And, I've made these promises for each of these tiers, and I must deliver every month. That is not true. The best memberships we found are the ones that change and evolve over time. You guys just made a great video about Emma Chamberlain and how her content changed over time, and how a lot of creators have fear of changing their content strategy. It was a beautiful video. I thought you articulated a problem really well. The same is true of memberships. Like, the best memberships grow with the creators. They grow with your evolving content strategy. They change as you do different things. And so we actually see when creators change their tiers and benefits, which we now have a product to do. You can change your tiers and benefits and change your price points. And Pomplamoose just went through that ourselves when we relaunched our new weekly video series. We totally threw out our old tiers and benefits, changed them, and created new ones with new price points and the whole thing. And it was great. It was actually a moment of growth for the band in terms of our members. Like, our members were pumped about it. Now, there's a little bit of a process there. You want to talk to your community first, say, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. Here's the new tiers. What do you think? Should we do anything different? We got feedback. We incorporated the feedback. We relaunched with the feedback, and it was awesome. But I guess the point of all that is creators are not machines. You can't do the same thing every month until you die. You need to express your own creativity. You need to grow your creativity. You need to grow yourself and adjust your content stream, adjust your content strategy. And so, we encourage creators to change their tiers, change their benefits, change their programs. And it actually has been like a wonderful thing for creators to have that renewed sense of freedom, so you don't feel like you're locked into something.
That's really interesting. I like thinking of it like that. And is there anything on the, is it per creator what the average, I guess, lifetime value or lifespan of a member is? Or is it typical that, someone who subscribes to a Patreon will remain subscribed for years and years and years?
Most of the value of the pledges basically stay around for many groups of patrons indefinitely. There's churn. But on the whole, what we found is creators create, and they do it really well. Right. A lot of creators. And so on average, creators actually grow over time a lot. Creators typically double their earnings over the course of their first year on the platform, and they triple their earnings over the course of their first 2 years on average. So yes, you lose some members because some people joined, I guess, for this specific thing, and then you change things or whatever it is, or they're just, they want to move on and they're interested in other things. There's some of that. But over the whole, creators are finding that they're growing more than they're shrinking.
Another issue we had, though, was with some of the product. I think we felt like we're putting these videos behind a paywall, but this is actually a YouTube embed. Someone could share that YouTube embed. We're launching a community, but it's actually a Discord. We're going live, but it's actually linking out somewhere else. And we felt like we wanted everything to be in-house. Why, from a product perspective, do things kind of link out?
It's such a good point. And for many, many years, we set up the infrastructure to be interoperable and compatible with the rest of the web. Because one of the things I didn't like about these other platforms was I was forced to use YouTube comments and YouTube community tab and YouTube this, and I wanted to be able to use other things where my fans were. I wanted to be able to email my $10 members using MailChimp. I wanted to be able to, when this new community platform popped up, I wanted to be able to use that community platform as opposed to being locked in. So we built everything basically connectable via API. And that's why we have, you can run a patron-only Discord, member-only Discord. You can run, member-only Vimeo videos, etc. Now, 7 years in, creators are saying, Patreon, this is crazy.
Why isn't upload a video?
Let me upload a video. And why is it so hard? And why do I have to sign up for Vimeo to upload a video to Patreon? Just make that easy and loud and clear. So we actually we're building that.
Oh, great.
So you're going to be able to upload videos to Patreon.
This would be a great time to announce our Patreon, right? Yeah. This feels like the right time to.
That's great.
In the past, we weren't yet qualified creators, and I'll explain a bit more, meaning like we didn't really have the strongest pulse on our value prop for our community until more recently. And I think now it's very clear when we sit and talk about it, what would go in our Patreon. Whereas before it was more loose of like, well, I guess we could do stuff like that, or what if we did something like that? And now it's like very clear cut what would go there, right? And I think when that happens, then it's obvious that maybe you are ready for membership. But I'm curious if you have an opinion on what type of creator is right and what type of creator maybe isn't right for launching a Patreon.
Absolutely. And by the way, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to sell you guys on Patreon. Like for a lot of creators, it's not
Right.
like they don't want to do
Yeah.
it, and that's totally legit and fine. So no pressure from
I mean,
me.
it's been 10 years and we haven't joined Patreon yet.
It's been 10 years, but
But we're interested.
Yeah.
I will say we're having more serious conversations about it now.
Yeah.
And this is why we're asking you these questions.
It's taken us a long time to figure out who
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So here's who it's good for, and this will change over time as well, because we want, obviously, in the self-interest of the business, but also just for the mission of the company, like we want to make Patreon accessible to all creators. But I would say for the first 7 years of the company, we're not trying to like compete with YouTube. We're not trying to compete with Twitter or Facebook and be the best place in the world to discover new stuff that you love. And we have to like build personalization algorithms and ranking, and we'd have to mitigate the relationship between creators and their fans, and we don't want to do any of that. So we didn't invest in search. We didn't invest in discovery, which means like if you're a creator and you don't really have a following, Patreon doesn't work so well for you. Like if you're a creator and you can upload a YouTube video and get 10,000 views and say, hey everybody, I'm launching a Patreon, then Patreon's awesome for you. But if you haven't really found product market fit with your work, with your creativity, then like Patreon isn't going to help you accomplish that. We help you with the membership part. And the thinking there was, there are a lot of companies that have 10 years of a head start on Patreon on discovery, search, personalization, algorithms, all that stuff. That's not going to be our value to the world. We're going to focus on the things that those companies weren't focusing on, which was the payments portion and helping a creator actually build like a paying community of their most passionate fans. So yeah, all that to say, if you haven't yet found like fit if you haven't found an audience yet, Patreon's not going to help you find an audience. We will help you like convert a portion of your audience to paying members is essentially what we do. And then who is it great for? I think it's great for creators who are serious about what they do and want to make a living being a creator or want to build a business being a creator. There are creators now on Patreon. I think people don't really know this, but there are creators on Patreon that are making literally $9 million a year on the platform. And I guess most people don't like
That is
know
so
that.
much money.
It's a lot of money. We actually just had, there are creators like literally doing like over $1 million a month on the platform now. So that 9 million figure is from last year. Why am I saying that? I think I'm saying that because these creators they have office space. They have 30 employees. Yeah. They have a COO. Like we don't get to talk to them anymore. We talk to their executive team. Like it's a whole new version of what a creator is. And those creators are building these massive businesses using membership as a major portion of their P&L to kind of scale the organization, pay their teams, pay their bills, level up their work, invest in gear, all that kind of stuff.
That's amazing. That is, I would say, much bigger than I maybe anticipated. Is that like the top?
Yeah, it's the top.
That's the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the vast majority, as I mentioned, like the vast majority of half of our payments volume is going to creators who are making between 1,000 and 10,000 is like middle class creativity. Yeah. There are a couple creators who are just at amazing scale and
that's incredible.
And have, reaching a ton of folks.
And is that typically in like podcasting or is it across?
It's across the board. Sometimes it's podcasting. A lot of it is video.
Yeah.
Web comics are big on Patreon as well. Visual art is big. Writing is big. Mm-hmm.
So going from being an artist, creator, and now running a company where you just raised $155 million and are valued at $4 billion. I'm not positive I would know what to do with $155 million. What are you going to do with, like, what do you do with that scale that you've reached?
So the money goes to the team,
Yeah.
right? It goes to the Patreon team. The vast majority of that money is paying employees to build cool shit.
Right.
So that's where the money goes. And then, where I think creators will see that and where you'll feel it is in features and new things. So, we're doing a ton of work on the mobile app to like level up the craftsmanship and quality. We're building native content. We're building native community. We're making a membership feel like I can take out my phone and communicate with my most devoted, most important fans really seamlessly and easily. That's kind of, what we want to build. That's like a lot of people and a lot of time to build slick, beautiful, native quality community and media experiences like that. So that's where it's going. It's going to the team who's going to build amazing products and features.
What for you is the difference between an artist and a professional creator? How does someone make that jump? What do you have to care about? What do you have to think about? What's the difference between those two things?
I've heard you guys talk about this before, and there's something different about creators. And I haven't really put my finger on it yet, but I think we were talking earlier about all these companies that are now serving creators. What is that canonical list of attributes that makes a creator? I think it's a couple things, and maybe there's a difference here with, between that and what makes an artist. I think audience for me is a big piece of it. Now, some companies would say, no, you don't need to have an audience to be a creator, right? Like Adobe serves creators, but their creators don't necessarily have audience. People use Photoshop. I think Adobe will call them creators, but they don't have to have a following. But the way I use the term creator, I'm thinking of people who have a following. I'm thinking of people who invest a lot in one-to-many relationships. I'm thinking of people who invest in one-to-many relationships where the term you guys have used in your videos is this sort of parasocial relationship. It's an asymmetric relationship where my audience maybe feels like they know me, but I don't necessarily know each member of my audience, which is like a really bizarre age for humans to be wading through here at this kind of scale. But I think those are some key attributes of a creator. And then I think the other big ones are I make stuff and it is digital media and I use the internet to distribute that stuff. I think that's a creator. And maybe some of the differences between creators and artists, I think of creators, and again, this is just my own personal kind of feeling about it. I guess there's probably people would have a lot of different definitions here, but there's a different type of people finding success as a creator, I've found. There's a desire to serve an audience, to have impact. There's an analytical aspect of being a creator where I'm figuring out systems design and algorithms and tweaking and adjusting and learning over time. And when I think of like traditional artists, I think of these sort of high conviction, I'm going to say the thing I have to say. I make for myself. I don't make for my audience. I make for me, for my own pleasure and creative outlet and expression. And I feel like creators have this sense of like, no, I want to have impact with my work. Like I want to reach people and I want to zig and zag and adjust my strategy based on response. And I can sort of pivot and find my way to having impact on others and having a conversation with others. That I think is part of the key difference, at least when I think about artists versus creators. Like imagine the example I always give because it's just so striking. Imagine Jimi Hendrix getting up in front of a webcam and be like, hey guys, like, don't forget to like and subscribe. And like, it's just, you can't even imagine it. It's crazy. Like that's a type of person that I think finds amazing impact, reaches people, but it's a different personality than a lot of the creators that are popping up today. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just, I think it's the ecosystem of the web has selected for a different type of person that is rising to the top. And those people I think we call creators.
So as creators, we mentioned like the one thing that I think the three of us sitting at this table can really understand about each other is that we've had moments of creating something, putting it out, and we knew it was wrong and our audience knew it was wrong. And Colin and I had a moment like that this year where we put out a video and we were actually pretty excited about it, but our audience immediately came back and was like, this was the wrong video. And we, the rest of the day, basically, I think you have this moment as a creator where you're like, oh, it's all over now, right? That was it.
How did I get so off track that I thought this was great?
Right. And
because you do get distanced.
Yeah.
It's inevitable that you develop a different perspective. Yeah.
And as YouTube creators, and I think since we've gotten our process down where we can put something out every week, the amazing thing is that we get to have a bit of a short memory and be like, okay, well, we can fix this and we can do a better video next week, right? We can get back to the drawing board and figure out. Have you had a moment like that with the platform of Patreon where you were like, oh, that I was excited about that, but that wasn't the right
No,
thing?
never. No. It's been smooth sailing the whole time. No mistakes.
That's what I would anticipate.
No problems.
About.
We're just cruising. Which of the 1,000 would you like to talk about? I'll give you like probably the gnarliest one just to kind of go straight into the juice.
Yeah.
And I say this because I think it's really important. Creators talk about this. Founders talk about this. It's in speeches, but people actually don't, I find, actually do it, which is to talk about bad mistakes and to celebrate those mistakes as like key lessons and moments that define the identity and trajectory of the company or the person or the team or whatever it is. So I offer this example, not to kind of chew us out, but just to in the spirit of celebrating mistakes and learning from those mistakes. Can I swear? Can I?
Wow.
We fucked up so hard.
Cat's out of the bag.
Like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it was like the worst product rollout we'd ever done, where we essentially, what we were trying to do is the way fees on Patreon are a combination of 1,000 little factors that have to do with multi-patronage and cross-pledging and all these things that were giving creators this wobbly fee structure every month. You couldn't really forecast how much your fees were going to be because it would depend on how many patrons you had that were also patrons of other people and charged at the same time and all this stuff. I won't get into it. We wanted to give creators a clean 95% cut. And so our thinking was, we'll just charge a fee on the patron side and have them pay credit card fees. Oh God, bad decision. We did a bunch of quantitative research. We put out a bunch of tests and, talked to patrons about it not talk to patrons about it. We put it like in the product for them to kind of work through. And we found that it was awesome. It was great for conversion. Creators made more money. They got the clean 95%. But they were quantitative tests. They weren't qualitative tests. And it wasn't human to human research. Hey, how do you feel about this? And we put it out and it was an absolute disaster. Like creators, what happened was patrons said, wait a minute, I'm paying $5 a month this year. I'm paying $1 a month to this creator and you're going to charge me 30 cents on top of that. They went and then talked to creators and said, hey, do you know that Patreon is charging me an extra 30 cents for my membership to you? And then creators went on to Twitter and said, what the fuck, Patreon? It was such a bad miss. And there are a couple key lessons for the company from that. The first was never step in between a creator and their fans. That is a sacred relationship that we have to honor and respect. And we should not inject ourselves into that relationship. We have to tell creators what's coming up, what's happening, and let them tell their fans and give them options. Second thing, speaking of options, is optionality. We have to do things in a way that preserve optionality for creators. Creators want to run their businesses in a variety of ways, and we have to get good at that. And then the third thing was just obvious, which is qualitative research. Talk to humans. Talk to them. Hear what they think about things. Hear if it's okay with them. Interview them. If we had done that, we would have systemically in the company gotten that feedback earlier before rolling out the product. Those are like key lessons for us in the early stages of product rollouts.
I think what's really interesting is that even at a company that's led by a creator, right? Like when you go from Jack Conte creator to Jack Conte CEO, there's a natural thing that happens where you start to get more and more distance from all of this, right? From being on stage and hearing the crowd, or from being a creator and understanding the pulse of, or from being a creator on Patreon and understanding the relationship. And I think that's the thing you mentioned earlier about the intangible. It's like there's people creating for creators who are further distanced, who have never experienced the relationship with an audience. And I think it's great to tell the story like this, because I think what you're experiencing with the platform and Patreon, or what you experience there, is the same thing that we have to think about with our audience as creators. Like we're making a product for a group of people, and we have to not just look at metrics, but we have to look at who is our audience and how are we providing value to them. Yeah, it's a great story.
100%. It's such an important lesson, and you're absolutely right. There are similarities. I often feel like I'm still just being a creator, just at like a different scale. And
where your audience are some of the biggest creators on the internet. So if you do something, they're going to be a megaphone, right?
Like 100%. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of it too, like in many ways it is very helpful, I think, that I'm a creator.
Yeah.
And, what we're doing at Patreon, the team is 300 people now. So like we're designing systems. I'm hiring an executive team who designs systems that generate products.
Right.
And there's a lot of complexity in that. And look, buck stops with me. Like, I don't mean to diffuse any of the responsibility. That whole payments debacle, that's my fault. And I screwed up, and I need to own that and own that lesson from that. And then to your point, Samir, around the distance, like as much as I'm sitting here talking about, I'm a creator. Yes, I am a creator. Yes, I'm making lots of videos, and I'm also in a different position now.
Yeah.
Financially, I'm in a different position. Patreon's a very valuable company. I'm a big shareholder in Patreon. Like, my personal wealth is different now than most creators. That, puts me in a position of privilege and power that is different than most creators. And if I didn't acknowledge that, I wouldn't be doing my job. So yeah, I guess acknowledging the distance, being aware of the distance, and just continuing to try to close the gap in whatever ways I can, I think is such an important part of it. I mean, if you don't do that, then I think you're just going to keep falling on your face.
I think the best thing you can do to sort of mitigate those types of situations is hire the right people, right? Like have the right people in the building. And it's the same for us. Samir and I have had videos that we wanted to make that we then asked the team. They're all creators in their own right who've been watching our channel for 5+ years, who go, no, I don't think that's actually right. Like, they many times know what's right.
Actually, the Emma Chamberlain video you mentioned was a specific example of that, where
that was a great video.
That was an idea we had. I mean, it was going to happen eventually, but it was low on our priority list. But
you never know, because if we didn't make it then, you never know. It could get pushed.
It could get pushed. But our team, everyone in this room, was basically fought us on saying that's the right video.
It was unanimous.
Yeah, it was unanimous. It was like, that's the video we got to make.
Samir and I had a video about NFTs we wanted to make. Everyone said, nope, Emma Chamberlain.
Yeah. And that video has now been, one of the videos that most people reach out to us about. We've connected with creators we always wanted to chat with because they said, you struck a chord in that video where I've been wanting to hear someone say this for a long time.
So wait, then I have a follow-up question for you guys about that, because this is another struggle. One thing I've found, like, great operators, really great, like, business operators, partners, teammates, there's a balance of, like, conviction about ideas. I know this is right. I believe I'm doing it, which I think, like, company building and creation takes conviction, right? But the balance of that is humility. And what you're talking about is, like, getting feedback from the team saying, no, that's not the right video, guys. This is the right video. Make that one. How have you balanced conviction and humility? How do you know when to take feedback and go with what someone else is saying versus kind of believing in your core idea and going with the NFT video.
One thing I will say is that we've spent many years just working with each other, and we've made a lot of mistakes and put out a lot of videos we didn't like. So history has shown us that when it's just us in a silo, sure, we'll get a lot of things done and we've made strides, but we've also made a ton of mistakes that had there been someone else in the room, we probably wouldn't have made those mistakes.
This is the visual I think that I like to think in this setting is like, I always like to think about the first thing we have to do, or when we became professional creators, what happened was we created a canvas, right? Prior to that, we had paint and we were painting anywhere. The thing that changed was, okay, actually we're just going to focus our energy in this canvas, right? And then once we do that, Colin and I are still like basically really close to the canvas painting. The team is standing behind us and recognizing when we go outside the lines. And they're like, no, guys, you're outside the lines. And we're like, what are you talking about? This is a beautiful thing I've drawn. But they're like, yeah, but you're outside of the canvas.
And you're like, but we've always gone outside the canvas.
Yeah.
Like we love going outside the canvas.
And I realized this when we made one of our first business hires, when I brought a deal to him that was the largest single deal we had ever seen ever. And it was outside the bounds of what we had just told him was our focus for the year. And I was like, yeah, it's outside the bounds, but like, we're going to take this deal. It's the biggest deal we've ever gotten. Of course, we're going to take the deal. And he was like, no, but it's outside the bounds. And I was like, well, what are you trying to say? He was like, oh, we're going to say no to this deal. And I took a step back and I was like, wow, that's really freeing that we brought someone in who is going to say no. And when we said no to that deal, we sent that email. I remember feeling like this weight off my shoulder. And I was like, yeah, that wasn't actually in line with what we wanted to do this year.
Oh,
And
I'm so happy we didn't do that.
That would have changed the trajectory of the year completely. And I think now as we start to look at whether you're on the creative team or on the business team, like that, our job is to communicate the canvas, but we're too crazy to continue painting in the lines of that canvas unless we have people holding us accountable to say, you're painting outside the canvas now. And so that's the job of a creative team. As you grow as a creator, that's the job of your team. You're still the creator. You still have paint in your hand, want to paint anywhere. You have an idea, you have a sip of coffee and you're like, wait, let's do this today. And it's like, no. Why are we doing that? That's outside the bounds. Do it in here.
It's the difference between an artist and a creator.
And a creator.
it's so important, I think, to be crisp about what you want and what you're trying to accomplish. And I remember in my early years as a creator, it definitely was a struggle because there's a lot of inbound that you get as a creator. Somebody wants you to do this. Somebody wants you to speak at this thing. There's this cool brand opportunity over there. And if you're trying to like get to a point where you can, play rooms around the US that are 1,000+ people, and that's like, you have this dream of touring and playing at 1,000-person venues, there's like 1,000 things that are pulling you in not that direction over the course of the year. And part of the struggle, I think, as a creative person is knowing, like, what things do I say no to? Because that can actually be more defining even than the things that you say yes to.
It's hard to say no also when you're scared, when you're like, when you live in a scarcity mindset of, I don't know if another opportunity like this will come. It's terrifying to say no.
How often do you guys have that feeling where it's like, well, that was the last good thing I ever made.
Probably
not going to make more good things.
Potentially every week. In some level.
Every time I start a new timeline, I'm like, I don't know if this is like the last one.
Is it going to happen again?
Why do we do that to my brain wants to just do that to me all the time. It's such a hard part of it.
That's the value of building a team, because now you start to realize, like, when for us, I recognize like you go from being an artist to like a professional problem solver, and the problems are really fun to solve when you're doing it together. And I think that is the most enjoyable, when you recognize, like, when you have that feeling of like, is this the last good thing I'm going to make? That's actually a problem. And you just turn to the team and like, let's solve this together. And that's exciting to me. That's where I think, how I was describing, like, I think in creating worlds where that world is really fun for me. And it used to be really overwhelming when it was just him and I. And I think it's even more overwhelming when you're just a single creator, because then you have a problem and you're like, it's impossible to solve. How can I solve that?
One of the hardest things I think about being a creator, and I didn't even know this until starting Patreon and working with a team, companies provide a lot of things. Like, and I'm not saying it's even like, oh, the company's being so benevolent. It's just that when you're working with groups of people who have shared goals, there's camaraderie, there's community, there's lifting each other up when you're down, there's education and coaching and learning from each other and clarity around focus and goals. All these things that are infrastructural about output and working as a person that creators don't get.
Yes.
And I was talking to this Substack creator the other day who writes a newsletter. I was actually interviewing him for a podcast that we're going to spin up. And I asked him what he missed about being employed by TechCrunch, which is what he used to write for. And his answer was like, essentially like, I miss the newsroom. I miss hanging out with other writers and having them edit my stuff and give me feedback on this article and picking me up when I'm down. I miss the shared community and feeling like I'm working on something with people. And again, I was telling you guys, before we started recording, I meet with these 6 creators every week. I have this thing called Jack's Creator Club, and I just hang out with a group of 6 creators. We shoot the shit. What's working? What's not? How's your Instagram stuff doing? How's the Patreon push doing? Et cetera. One of the common themes that comes up all the time is a feeling of being alone, of feeling lost, of not knowing how to even know what you want as a creator, what the framework for prioritization should be or is. I think that's actually going to be one of the bigger problems as the creative class evolves and as it fragments from corporate America into individual creators. One of the big problems that's going to have to be solved is how do you kind of get encouragement and education and support from a community? Because that doesn't really exist right now.
I think we just need more vocabulary and more curriculum.
Yeah.
Right. If you think about, there are doctors, and then if you go even deeper, there's an orthopedic surgeon. You know exactly how to become an orthopedic surgeon, and then there are communities of orthopedic surgeons. With creators, again, we just have that word creator, and it's so broad.
I love that.
And I will say, Jack,
that's right on.
This is the problem we want to solve because we felt alone. Right. And when we jumped from our jobs to becoming independent creators, some of the hardest years of our lives, and the level of emotional turmoil, I would say, that we went through, where you're questioning your worth and you're looking for validation and trying to be like, do I make anything meaningful? Am I meaningful, right? If I'm not making anything that's of value or of commercial value to anyone, it's a very confusing thing to go through. And I think it's one of the most aspirational jobs with the least amount of training and the least amount of community around it right now. And I think that's the problem we're passionate about solving, especially through education and community. And I think that's like, there has to be a world where we create a creator MBA or something, right? And I think the amazing thing is we're creators. We know how to make videos and make curriculum and communicate messages and articulate ideas to large groups of people. That's what we do. So we're in a great position because we have the passion to do it, to try and do that.
I love that. I think, and my thinking has changed around this too, because I think initially I thought it was a knowledge problem, and it's not a knowledge problem. Knowledge is a portion of it, but it's an emotional problem. It's a connection problem. It's a feeling of togetherness and belonging with people who are struggling the same way you're struggling to do this thing that is unprecedented and weird. And that is I think that's the bigger part of the problem. The like, I want to level up my skills and know what a good plugin is for Premiere. Yeah, that's it. That's like, you can kind of, that's easier to solve.
That's a fun problem
It's
to
a
solve
fun problem.
because you can solve it.
100%. The guts of the problem is that sense of camaraderie.
Yeah. Who am I in this world, right?
Yeah.
What is this? What am I doing? And I think it's a huge opportunity. And I think Colin said something really impactful last week to me, where he said, being a creator is not a career. Being a creator can be a career. And I thought about that, how so many people right now are making content, getting millions of views and being like, well, why isn't this working? What's happening? And then that's a quick path to burnout and frustration. And you don't know what the roadmap is And although every creator is different, there are some guidelines that you can follow to at least try and make it into a career. And I think that's what we've been accumulating in our experience of looking back and saying, okay, we had some of the hardest years of our lives where we're making no money, and now we have a team of 10. What happened, right? And we've basically gone back, and the way that we analyze the creator world, we've analyzed ourselves too. And then as we talk to more and more creators, there's a lot of commonalities. And I think for us, like synthesizing that into curriculum is a massive part of our passion.
Yeah, I think that's such an important service for the world right now, because there are literally hundreds of millions of people that could benefit from that. And it is lonely, and there aren't answers. No. There's not definitive answers. And I think, one of the things that's confusing about it too is there's so many tools. There's tools, there's project management tools, there's QuickBooks, there's Asana, there's all these pieces of software that exist, and those things are different than the skills required to build a business and build a real career, as a creator. Learning how to use project management software is a different set of skills from understanding how much money is acceptable for me to spend this year on my videos.
Right.
That's like a deep, hard, gnarly problem to answer as a creative person. And it requires a very first principles kind of mindset and thinking, and also a knowledge of oneself. Like, to answer that question, like, how much should I spend on my videos? I'd be like, well, like, what's your risk tolerance?
Totally.
But I think there is a simple, because a lot of people ask me that question. And for me, when I got to a point where I could solve that was just, and I didn't, I was a pretty bad student. I wasn't that into school, but I like solving these problems. And I had to think about like, well, how much can we spend? Can we get an office? Can we hire someone? I have to figure this out. And for me, it was just looking at ins and outs. Okay.
100%.
Right? It was just on average, how much comes in and how much do I need to come out for us to live? And what's the delta? And then you just look at ins and outs. And actually that's the simplest way to look at it. And I think that's when we made, a couple of videos about membership, and why membership makes so much sense is because you can start to calculate an in a lot easier than sporadic brand partnerships or AdSense or anything else. And I think at a base level, the first thing for creators to learn is just calculate your ins and outs. It'll save you so much time if you just do that. And you could do it on a sheet of paper. You could do it in an Excel document. You just have to look at what's coming in and what's going out. And then you'll solve what's happening in your business.
Yeah, like monthly recurring revenue is the key to being a career creator. And it can come in a variety of ways. Yeah. It can come because of a membership. For us, it came in the form of a long-term brand sponsorship.
Yeah. That was our first check. That was like, oh, we have recurring
With
revenue.
Storyblocks.
I think
that was Samsung.
Samsung,
Storyblocks.
okay.
So you're right. No, actually you're right. Storyblocks was the first annual.
Yeah.
Wow. You know our story better than us.
Yeah.
Jack.
Storyblocks came in, but then Samsung pushed it over the edge to the point where we realized we didn't have to get jobs that year.
Yeah. That's an amazing moment. One other kind of input into that process of ins and outs, because one thing that has helped me just as like think about that problem as a creator, and I've talked to so many creators about it now. I like to think about ins and outs, but then there's a second component, which is cash balance for me as a creator.
Sure.
And the way I think about cash balance is like, I want to have enough of a cushion so that if there's a really crappy month,
Right.
or 3 crappy months, we don't have to worry about cash flow issues.
Right.
So like, Pockets and Pomplamoose have both tried to keep a cushion. We think of it as like an automobile suspension. It's like when the road is rocky,
I like that.
the car can kind of wave up and down. And if you run negative a couple months in a row at negative $5,000 or negative $10,000, doesn't matter, because you have enough of a cushion so that you're not like struggling to meet bills in a particular month. So the second component of it for us has been like, operate with enough of a cash cushion such that you can have a couple strings of gnarly months and not feel super stressed and like you hate your life. And then the third thing I'll say is Pockets got to a point where like sometimes people say like, when should I hire somebody? When is it okay to like invest in my videos? The way I think of it is like, if it can save you a lot of time or help you grow your your business, then I think it generally makes sense to hire somebody as long as the cash cushion is there and as long as the ins and outs are there.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I throw that in too is because doing this stuff by yourself is like, I don't know how long you can actually do it by yourself before it's just not sustainable. It is hard to keep cranking out stuff every month if you're a one-person operation.
Agreed.
And having a team there to support you, I would rather have a team and not make money than not have a team and be cranking profits. Like, it's so important to, I think, get to a point where the creativity is fun and rewarding and you feel excited to wake up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's so much more important than making an extra 10% that month. Yeah.
Which one is your higher paying job right now, being Jack Conte, the creator, or being Jack Conte, the CEO?
So from a salary, if you don't think about the value of my equity,
Yeah.
If you just look at like my salary, the bands make way more money than I make as CEO.
That's so interesting.
Way more money.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, each band makes, $500,000, $600,000. Now that's top line.
Sure.
And we spend all of it making stuff. So it's not profit.
Mhm.
But it's top line. And then that's like so much more than I make as CEO.
That's amazing. What's the math of that for the bands? Like, how many patrons does it take to make $500,000 for those bands?
So a third of our income is membership. A third is streaming revenue from Spotify and others. And then a third is ads on YouTube.
Got it.
And when you combine all those things together, it's like a pretty good recurring monthly chunk. And yeah, it's about a third.
That's really cool. I love hearing that because I love how niche the internet gets. Like, it's just the world of people like us, quote unquote, right? Like, you can find people like you. And I think that's the coolest thing about the internet, right? It's just like, when we started the Lacrosse Network, everyone was like, that's a terrible idea, right? So it was one of the worst ideas. So you're going to start a network dedicated to the sport that very few people care about. And it was like, well, actually, we found hundreds of thousands of people who care about it. So, and I mean, that was incredible. And I think that's happening now, probably more and more in smaller and smaller communities, which is really cool.
My favorite thing about the internet, it's been my favorite thing for many years. I think it's still my favorite thing, is that suppose you're really bizarre. Suppose you're a total weirdo and your taste is really out there.
Yeah.
And in your town, it's 1 in 1,000 people who like your thing. Like 1 in 1,000. Like nobody likes your thing. You feel alone. You feel like nobody gets you. You feel like you're not successful. You're not impactful. On the internet, there are 2 million people who like your thing if your ratio of 1 in 1,000 holds up. That's beautiful. Like, to live in a world previously where it was like, you got BBC One, you got BBC Two, you got BBC Three. If you don't fit into one of those 3 channels, like you don't have a voice. And to move from that to a world where 1 in 1,000 people can like your thing and millions of people can then view and follow and support and be part of your membership or whatever it is, that is a new era for humans. I mean, I think it's what has ultimately led to this explosion over the last 6 months, 12 months, and people waking up to this thing is like the accessibility of creation tools, plus this era where like you can find your tribe online, you can find your people. It's just I think it's a really beautiful time to be a creative person. It's such an honor for me to talk with you and be on this show. I'm trying not to fanboy, but thank you for having me and for including me in this. It's fun.
Well, I mean, it's surreal for us to have you here again. I remember watching that first video of yours and being like, whoa, this guy
can edit and tell stories. He also has a company. What's going on here?
Yeah. So appreciate it. And I think it's good for us to have these transparent conversations between creators about something that affects creators. And it was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey everybody, quick message here at the end of the episode. If you liked it, Jack actually has his own podcast called the Creator Economy Podcast, and his first guest is Reddit founder Alexis Ohanian. We're gonna put the link in the description.
Samir, you want to say anything?
No, it sounded like that was the end of your sentence.
I said
but then
everything.
It wasn't the end of your sentence.
Yeah.
So
All right,
pretty
guys.
confusing. All right. See ya.
Enjoy.